Okay, so recording has started. I'm gonna flip on over here to my daily agenda. You should see me skateboarding with my best friend. I named him Rocky. I think Rocky the Raccoon is kind of a fun name. So you should see me skateboarding, yelling, "You got it," with Rocky the Raccoon on the front. Today's September 14th. It is Monday. So happy Monday. I'm getting some background noise, so I had to mute someone. So September 14th, happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. There's a lot of writing on here, but let's break it down little by little, and it all makes sense. So our classwork, first and foremost, we're going to answer some questions on prime or composite, kind of review what it means to have a prime number or a composite number. We're then going to do a little review of Unit 1A, which I said is what we are just finishing up, because there's a Section A, there's a Section B for Unit 1. We're going to finish up Section A today. You're going to do a little checkpoint quiz so I can see where you're at, and that's it. Okay. Target for today, as we continue the prime or composite lesson, is to determine whether a given whole number is prime or composite using rectangles. And then the next bullet, find the factor pairs of a given whole number. Homework, that prime or composite sheet that I'm going to kind of go over with you today is due tonight by midnight. And then the checkpoint/quiz, I said that's due tonight as well, just because I think it's really important for me to see where we're at today. Okay, so that's not like a super strict deadline. Like if you don't get it done tonight, don't freak out. That's not going in the grade book as far as like skyward, but I do want to see where we're at. So please try your hardest, do it alone, and use this as a chance for me to kind of get a good gauge of where we're all at. Okay, so I'll stop sharing this screen. Any questions on what we're going to do today, or the quiz, or anything like that? Ariana?
What's the quiz about?
There's pretty much one question for each of the main things we've talked about. So factors, multiples, prime numbers, composite numbers, things like that. Okay, I'll show you more at the end of class once I let you go, and I'll let you go work on it. So I'm going to share my screen, go through that whole process. Get you over here. Okay, so you should see this prime or composite worksheet, which is what was assigned to you on Friday. Were there any questions on this worksheet? Remember, we had an area over here. Your job was to come up with all the factor pairs and the number of rectangles for it and determine if it was prime or composite. Go ahead and raise your hand if you have any questions, or come off mute and ask it. Are there any questions or misunderstandings about this worksheet? All right, well, that's good. I don't see any hands up. I do want to review what prime and composite means. So can someone please answer, what does it mean if you have a prime number? Like, what is a prime number? What was the definition that we talked about on Friday? Ariana?
It's like only one rectangle you can multiply to get the number.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we came up with. Exactly right, Ariana. If you're looking for an area and you can only come up with one rectangle, and that rectangle is a width of 1 and a length of that number, that's the only one, then you have a prime number. We also said that, looks like we have someone coming in. It's probably going to kick me off. I got to put it back up. Yep. We said that this, let's take 2, for example. That was the first example we did. That was a prime number over here. We said there's only one possible rectangle for an area of 2 square units. And we said that it was 1 times 2. Well, we had a name for that 1 times 2. Do you remember what this is? What these numbers 1 and 2 make? It starts with an F. It was a vocab word that we had. Ariana, I'll go back to you. Your hand was raised. What was this called when we had 1 and 2? You remember, Ariana? You can go for it. You can answer. Come off of me.
Multiple?
Close. So a multiple was actually the product. So the answer, we would say, is a multiple of each of these two numbers. It started with an F.
Factor.
Right, factor. So these two together, 1 and 2, actually make, I'll write it down just so we remember. They make a factor pair. Because remember, a pair, not like the fruit, but a pair like two things that are paired together. So a factor pair are two numbers that, when multiplied together, give us another number. So those two numbers are a factor pair of the product. So if 2 square units is what we're looking for, both 1 and 2 are factors of 2, and they're also a factor pair together. Okay, so we said, as Ariana just kind of reminded us about prime numbers, well, prime numbers only have one possible rectangle or only one factor pair that works, right? Then we said, well, composite is the opposite. Composite is when we have 2 or more factor pairs that give us that product, that answer. So in the case of 10 square units, we came up with 2 rectangles. We had 1 times 10, and we had 5 times 2. And we did that, we showed it over here in our factor rainbow as well, where we have 1 and 10 tied together, 2 and 5 tied together. So we should get the same number in each of the possible number of rectangles, amount of factors, and the amount of lines in our factor rainbow. Right? 2 lines in our factor rainbow, 2 factor pairs that we show through multiplication, 2 possible rectangles. It's all the exact same, right? They should all be consistent. Okay. Any questions on this worksheet before we go to a quick review? Okay. Ariana.
Did you see mine?
I haven't had a chance to yet, but my plan is this afternoon to look through it. So
Okay. Well, awesome.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Okay, so let's do a quick little summary review of what we've done so far in this unit. Now, this should be in your workbooks, page 13. Also in your packet, it's labeled as page 11. Okay, so I want you to follow along here if you can. Workbook, page 13. Packet, it's listed as page 11. It looks just like this, lesson 3 summary. Let me get my Surface all set up. Get my highlighter out. Okay, so this is going to cover everything that we talked about since we started Unit 1, which would have been like the Friday before last, I believe, when we started talking about multiples. So we're going to go kind of section by section here, dissecting each of the pieces, talking about it, reviewing it, answering questions if you have it. Now remember, you're going to have a short little quiz after this, so it's going to cover this kind of material. So if you have questions anywhere, let's get it solved now. All right, let's not wait. So lesson 3 summary. In this section, we use our understanding of the area of rectangles to learn about factors, multiples, factor pairs, prime numbers, and composite numbers. Okay, so each of those things I highlighted there were those vocab words that I highlighted in each of my daily slides that I showed. And they were the main things we talked about. So factors, multiples, factor pairs, prime numbers, composite numbers. If we know the side length of a rectangle, okay, so we know the either the columns or the rows, we can find the areas that the rectangle could have. For instance, one example that we did earlier was a rectangle with a side length of 3 could have an area of 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, or other numbers that result from multiplying a whole number and 3. We call those numbers multiples of 3. Remember when we did that lesson where we had a width of 3 for our rectangle, and so we determined that depending on how many rows there were, because we knew it was 3 columns wide, depending on how many rows we had, the area could have been 3, could have been 6, could have been 9, 12, and on and on and on, in which we found those by skip counting by 3 each time, or multiplying a number by 3. And we said if whatever number we land on, whether it's 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, on and on and on, those numbers are multiples of 3 because we can multiply some number by 3 to land on that number or get an area of that number for a rectangle. Okay, so that was our first stop. We talked about multiples. Multiples are the end result. They're the product. So 12 is a multiple of 3. 15 is a multiple of 3 because we can skip count by 3 and land on 12 or 15, whichever one we're talking about. Okay, moving on to the next one for factor pairs. If we know the area of a rectangle, so we know the inside, we know how many units are on the inside, we can find the side lengths that the rectangle could have. For all areas, there's at least one rectangle we can make, right? But sometimes there are multiple rectangles, many rectangles that we can make for that area. So for example, a rectangle with an area of 24 square units can have side lengths that are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, or 4 and 6 for its side lengths, which is shown here with these rectangles in between the paragraphs. All right, we have a 1 by 24, a 2 by 12, a 3 by 8, a 4 by 6. Right, these all give us an area of 24. We can find that area by multiplying the columns and the rows, or the side lengths together, length and width. Okay. We call these possible pairs of side lengths factor pairs of 24. Okay, so if each grouping of 2 is a factor pair, how many factor pairs does 24 have? We said 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. How many factor pairs are there? Alan?
4.
Yeah, there are 4 factor pairs. We have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. Thank you, Alan. We can also show this using our factor rainbow that we've been making. We have 1 and 24. Let me scroll over. There we go. 1 and 24, right? We always start at 1. We write down 1 and the number because we said that that is always an option. Then we go to 2. We could write 2 and 12. And then we go to 3 and see if that works. And we found that 3 and 8 works. And then we have 4 and 6. Sorry, it's kind of close together there. But with each of these representations, in fact, there's another way we can too. We can do with multiplication. So I'll write that down real fast. What I was going to say is that each of these representations should give us the same amount of factor pairs. Okay, we have listed here in the writing 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. There's 4 that are listed there. We can make rectangles with those side lengths. There are 4 rectangles. We can use multiplication to help us find the area using those side lengths in a multiplication expression. There are 4 expressions. We can write it out in a factor rainbow and connect all the lines. There are 4 lines being connected, right? These are all consistent. They're all the same. We will always have the same amount of factor pairs, assuming we do it right. So if you have something off one way or the other, you've done something wrong and you have to go back and double check. But this is how we show our factor pairs. Okay, and we said that those two numbers, when multiplied together, grouped together, is a factor pair. So actually, I'm going to move on real fast. I'll ask this in a little bit. The next thing we learned about, now that we know what factor pairs are, we learned about prime numbers. It says we also learned that a number that only has one factor pair, so it has only, oops, that's not my highlighter. So a number that only has one factor pair, which is 1 and the number itself. Remember, that's how we always started our factor rainbow. We started with 1 connecting to the number itself. If a number only has that one factor pair, it is a prime number. So for instance, 5 is a prime number because its only factor pair is 1 and 5. Now we next learned about composite numbers. So a number that has 2 or more factor pairs is a composite number. And the example they give is 15 is composite because its factor pairs are 1 and 15, 3 and 5. All right, so it has 2 or more factor pairs. So with that being the case, Alan, I'm going to go to you since you asked or you answered how many factor pairs 24 has. Is it a prime number or a composite number? 24.
Composite.
And how do you know that?
Because there's more than one equation.
Yeah, good explanation. There's more than one equation, more than one multiplication expression. There's multiple factor pairs, so more than one. And remember, we said that there's only 2 categories or classifications that you can describe these numbers as. It's either a prime number, meaning one factor pair and only one factor pair, 1 in the number itself, or it's composite, meaning 2 or more factor pairs. So that composite pulls in 2 factor pairs, 8 factor pairs, 100 factor pairs, however big the number is, it's all composite. So it's either prime or composite. Those are the only 2 that we're going to talk about. Okay, are there any questions on this review? This covered the main points that we discussed in the unit so far. Okay, very good. I'm always here if you have questions. So if you start to look at the quiz, which I'll pull up right now, and you have questions on things, I might be able to explain it a little bit easier for you. Okay, so here's Unit 1A checkpoint. This is what you should view. So Genovese, Giovanni, Giovanna, Lily have all viewed it. Awesome. Here's the activity. You can open it up in OneNote, and there will be 2 pages for you. If it will load. Da, 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 da. I might have to show you over here because I do have it right here. Okay, so here's the quiz, a little checkpoint. If you picked up a packet, you will have this first page. Okay, you'll have this rectangle here, you'll have this grid, and that's all you have. Unfortunately, I didn't see that there was a second page to this quiz. For whatever reason, the online site that I pulled it from only showed the first page. So I thought it was just 1 page. And then I looked in my teacher guide and it said 2 pages. And I was like, oh no, everybody who has a packet only has the first page. So if you're listening in and you're going to use the packet, this is what you already have, this first page here. And then I added this second page here. Okay, it's going to look a little bit different than the actual page 35 that would have followed this, but I just copied down the questions that I asked. Okay, so if you have the packet, you'll need to look at these 2 questions here and make sure you answer those as well. Okay, if you open it up on OneNote, you'll have both pages. You'll have this first page that everyone has, and then the second page that I typed up for you. This is not in the workbook, Genovesia. She asked, will this be in the workbook? It will not be, because this is like a quiz, a little checkpoint. Okay, I also left in, there it is, now it loaded. So this is what you see when you open up OneNote on Teams. You'll have these 2 grids here, and then you'll have multiple choice, and then a little how do you know, prime number or composite. I also left you with PDFs if you can't open it. Page 1 PDF you will have if you have Packet. Page 2 is what you need. Okay, this is what you don't have if you have Packets. Okay, Giovanna, I see your hands up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. On the first one.
On the first page?
Yeah.
Okay.
On number 1.
Okay.
Do we have to find the area of a whole square or only the one? The
Yeah,
square
so
that is underlined.
That's a great question. So just the blacked outline one. Okay, so not the entire one. It looks like one row and one column smaller, or 2 rows, 2 columns smaller, but just inside. Did I answer your question? The sharp black outline?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm gonna stop recording. I've been recording this